Join us at Walters on Friday, October 4th for our end-of-season podcast party. The evening is scheduled from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Here comes the 0-2. Swing a high fly ball, deep right field. Gallo going back, looking up at the wall, and it is off the wall. The game's tied. The ball caroms by him. Olsen into second with a double. As coming in to score is Merrifield, and the Nationals' lead is all gone. 1-2 the count. Here comes Garcia. Swinging a ground ball up the middle, base hit into left center field. The Braves will take the lead. Olsen in to score. Darno a ground ball single. Atlanta's first lead tonight, 3-2.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Sunday, August 25th, 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Truist Park in Atlanta. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We on Saturday night had the 1,000th regular season game for Davey Martinez as Nats manager, but the result was a loss, a 4-2 loss at the Atlanta Braves in Game 2 of a 3-game series. The Nats in this game did blow a 2-0 fifth-inning lead. This off the Nats in their 3-2 10-inning loss at the Braves on Friday night, blowing a 2-1 7th-inning lead. The Nats now 58-72, and they have a quick turnaround. Game 3 of this series is at 12:05 p.m. on Sunday, as the game is a Roku game. The Nats on Saturday night did get more good pitching, but the Nats went 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position, committed another out on the base pass. And also on Saturday was the Nats placing Alex Call on the 10-day injured list, but not promoting outfielder Dylan Cruz to the majors as the corresponding roster move, as we will have to wait until Monday for that. But Mark, perhaps the Nats could have used Dylan Cruz on Saturday night.
Well, we've noted that one of his best qualities has been clutch hitting. And boy, does this team need somebody who can come through for them in this big spot. It's not just today. This has been going on for a while now, and it's getting pretty frustrating because, again, they're doing a lot of things well, and they're giving themselves a chance to win a lot of these games against good teams like the Atlanta Braves. And they're just finding ways to lose these games, whether it is not delivering at the plate in a big spot, whether it's committing a mistake in the field, a mistake on the bases, or also in this case, the bullpen not being able to get the outs when they need it. Although I feel like, given all the other stuff, you're now asking a bullpen to be perfect that we know is not a perfect bullpen, given what the makeup of it is right now. So to me, I think there should be some frustration over this stuff. This is a team that I know is not there yet, but if they want to be thought of as a team that's really on the rise and that is earmarking 2025 as a year to take that big step forward, they got to start winning some of these games that are there for the taking against good teams. And not just that they're not winning them, but that they're losing them in the way they are, with a lack of fundamentals, a lack of clutch hitting, all those other things. It does stand out. And it's like, at some point, you got to flip that switch if we're starting to actually believe that this team can be what we think it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky deal because with specific Nats players, you see signs that the rebuild is working. But with the team as a whole, you actually don't see those signs. Like, the record isn't appreciably better as compared to last season. The overall team performance, especially when you talk about like the offense of the team, is certainly not appreciably better as compared to last season. The run differential is better. I guess you could point at that. But you're not seeing signs of a team on the rise. You have players on the rise, but the team as a whole, you're not getting that. So with this thing of Dylan Crews not being promoted on Saturday, look, I don't think anyone is surprised by this. I'm not going to kill the Nats for this. But, this does stand out from a perspective of if this was all about baseball and nothing else, Dylan Crews would have been the corresponding roster move to what was done with Alex Call. So the Nats on Saturday afternoon did put Call on the 10-day injured list, put him on that with a partial tear of the plantar fascia in his left foot. And the corresponding roster move was the Nats calling up yet another catcher. The Nats called up catcher Drew Millas from AAA Rochester. We had this conversation when the James Wood thing happened. And again, we get it. It's not just about baseball, but I think it is worth highlighting this. If it was about baseball, then Dylan Crews would have been that corresponding roster move on Saturday and not Drew Millas.
Of course. And he might have helped them out if he was in right field instead of Joey Gallo, although Gallo made a nice play in right field. I'll give him that, but he also went 0 for 4 and struck out twice. Facing Charlie Morton, who for his career, Joey Gallo is now 0 for 22 with 17 strikeouts. So you can't say that it was a great matchup or that Dylan Crews wouldn't have presented a better option there. Now, as far as the third catcher thing and calling up Millas, I'm really interested to see now what the move is on Monday when they do officially call Crews up. Are they going to stick with 3 catchers? If it's September and expanded rosters, I could see that, but we're not quite there yet. There's still a week to go. Would they just do that a week early? Or could we see Riley Adams go back down again? And I'll be interested to see how that goes because there's not a whole lot of rationale otherwise for carrying 3 catchers, especially with Crews coming up because you're going to have enough DHs. It's not like you need Adams to DH or Ruiz to DH on certain days. So I'll be very interested to see what they do on Monday. That one caught me a little by surprise just in terms of the timing of it because you're about a week away when you might do a move like that when rosters expand. Why do it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that Yepez, Tena, Chaparro, one of those 3 guys might be the player who gets optioned to AAA, but now that Millas is up, I mean, maybe it's Millas who's sent back down, but yeah, to your point, it might be Adams. And I think that does further this notion that we have discussed of there could be an offseason move coming at catcher because the Nats very clearly do not love either Adams or Millas. Keibert Ruiz is probably here for a while because of that contract and because he has shown that he can be, a good catcher. And obviously he has been better lately. But man, the Nats just do not seem very high on Adams or Millas. Neither guy plays with any kind of frequency. I mean, it made me laugh when Millas was this corresponding roster move. The last time that he was up at the majors, he languished on the bench. He never played. And look, to the Nats' defense, it's not like Millas, when he has played, has really stood out at the major league level. So yeah, we shall see. So with the Nats offense in this game, similar to the game on Friday night, the Nats had base runners in this game. Charlie Morton, the Braves starting pitcher, 2 runs in 5 2/3 innings, but he gave up 8 hits. He issued 2 walks. The Nats for the game had 10 hits to go with 2 walks, but 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Ended up really standing out. There was an offensive standout for the Nats in this game, and it was Jose Tena. Tena hit his first career Major League regular season home run, so congrats to him. He had a 3-hit game. He is the Nats' starting third baseman and number 6 batter, 3 for 4 with a 2-run homer and 2 singles. Tena in the Nats, a 2-run second, went out 2-run homer to right field for a 2-0 Nats lead. Tena in the top of the 6th, so went out opposite field single through the left side of the infield, and Tena in the top of the 8th, a 2-out single through the right side of the infield. So going back to this idea of Tena, Chaparro, and Yepez, it seems like they take turns of who's doing well, and in each game, at least one of the 3 does something. Chaparro on Friday night had the 2-run double, and Tena on Saturday night has the 3-hit game.
Look, Tena's hitting 400 now. I know it's limited, sample size. It's 14 for 34, but he is hitting, and that was the reputation. Now, defensively, there's a lot of work still to be done there, and he had a moment in this game with him and Keibert Ruiz not communicating and letting a foul ball just fall right in between them. So there's a lot to be done in that regard, but the kid is hitting. And so I think at this point, at least until you are ready, if you're going to call Brady House up at some point in September, I think I'm sticking with him and letting him play third base every day and see what he can do and how he fits into it. Chaparro has had his moments. We've seen Yepes have his moments as well, a little less so lately with him. So I will be interested to see how this all plays out, because there isn't really room for all of them, I don't think, or at least not at bats for all of them. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I'm kind of surprisingly encouraged by Jose Tena and what he's done. He's come through in big spots. Remember the walk-off hit in his debut, produced the big home run in this game, and just kind of consistently giving them good at-bats at the plate. Now, I don't know what it means in the long run, but right now in their situation, keep putting him out there and find out what you have.
And the guy for whom he was traded, Lane Thomas, has not done much for the Cleveland Guardians since going there. That's for sure. Chaparro, off having the 2-run double on Friday night, did have a 2-hit game on Saturday night. He is the Nats starting first baseman and number 7 batter, 2 for 4 with a double and a single. Top of the second, went out first pitch single to center field. Top of the fourth, went out opposite field, ground rule double to left field.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
The kick and the pitch. Swinging a ground ball, softly hit to short. Abrams boots it! The wheels are coming off. That was an inning-ending double play ball. And Abrams commits his second error of the series, his 15th of the season.
You mentioned, though, defense. Second consecutive game, C.J. Abrams has an error. He had the walk-off throwing error on Friday night. He, in this game, committed a fielding error. Now, he did have 2 hits to go with a stolen base, 2 leadoff singles for Abrams as an at-starting shortstop and number 1 batter. But Abrams committed an error in an inning that, amazingly, ended up only yielding 1 run for the Braves. This was something. So this inning was the bottom of the 6, and that'll take us here to the Nats bullpen. So 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 2 runs in 2 2/3 innings. Robert Garcia, he officially allowed 1 run without recording it out. He faced 3 batters, got no outs. Garcia came into the game in the bottom of the 6th with a runner on third, 1 out, and the Nats holding a 2-1 lead. But Garcia, to the first batter he faced, gave up a 1-out RBI double by Matt Olson off the right field wall on an 0-2 pitch to tie the game at 2. Garcia, to the next batter he faced, gave up a 1-out RBI single by Travis d'Arnaud up the middle on a 1-2 pitch for a 3-2 Braves lead. Garcia then induced a 1-out grounder off the bat of Ramon Laureano, but Abrams committed a fielding error. He botched the fielding of a totally routine grounder. But then came Tanner Rainey, who in a high-leverage spot came through big. He tossed 2/3 of a scoreless inning, comes into the game in this bottom of the 6th, runners on first and second, 1 out, Nats down 3-2. Rainey faced 3 batters, got 2 big outs, each of which was a swinging strikeout. So a lot to take in with that 6th inning. Garcia, who we know can be really good, in this case was really bad. Rainey comes through in the high-leverage spot, and Abrams, an error for a second consecutive game.
He looks kind of spooked out there. I hate to say it, but like there's something going on. I don't think you just look at each play individually, but in a larger picture, there's something that hasn't quite looked right about him for a little while in the field. And you hope it's not something that lingers any longer than this, but it is something to keep an eye on. So there's that. That inning was about as sloppy as you're going to get, as ugly as you're going to get, and still somehow only come away with 2 runs scored. It was remarkable. And I guess for that, give Tanner Rainey all the credit in the world. It was great to see him in a big spot finally, and it was great to see him deliver and not just get outs, but strikeouts, as you said. Good slider he had to get those, and I've noticed the velocity ticking up. And again, at this point, throw him out there, see what he can do. There's no reason not to try it, given what the rest of the bullpen is at this point. And then as far as Robert Garcia is concerned, I think this is the critical moment of the game where Davey Martinez decides to pull Jake Irvin after 5 1/3 innings. He's only at 83 pitches. He's been really, really good against the Braves in 3 starts now this year. And he brings in Garcia to match up with Matt Olson. Now, lefty-lefty matchup. Garcia had faced Olson the night before, struck him out. The previous 2 nights, he had faced 5 batters in total and struck out 4 of them. Looked really good. As we've discussed, when he is on, he is really, really good. But as we've also discussed, when he's off, he is really, really bad. And so bring him in for the 3rd day in a row, and look what happens. He gets 2 strikes on both those batters, Olson and d'Arnaud, gives up the huge double that was inches from being a home run, and then gives up the RBI single to d'Arnaud. So I understand it, and maybe if he hadn't pitched the night before or 2 nights before, you say, okay, but you're pushing your lefty reliever to pitch 3 days in a row, and a guy who you know is very hit or miss, and not letting a starter who's been very good and who you're trying to really find out how good he can be for you, and you're pulling him at 83 pitches. Maybe it wouldn't have worked. Maybe Irvin would have given it up as well, but I would have loved to see him get that opportunity. I think that was a moment within this game and in the larger picture where I want to start seeing these guys get pushed. I want to see how a starter does to get himself out of a jam, especially a guy pitching as well as Jake Irvin, who's been a workhorse like Jake Irvin has.
And with him at only 83 pitches, I mean, I think that's what stands out maybe as much as anything. And the bottom of the 6th was something, just 2 runs for the Braves. 1 gets charged to Irvin, 1 gets charged to Robert Garcia. The rest of the Nats bullpen story in this game, Jose A. Ferrer, scoreless bottom of the 7th with 2 strikeouts. And then Joe LaSorsa allowed 1 run in 1 inning, bottom of the 8th. He gave up a moonshot of a home run, a 1-out full count solo homer by Ramon Laureano to center field for a 4-2 Braves lead. LaSorsa had Laureano down at 1.12. That homer going a projected 430 feet per Statcast. By the way, while we're talking about the bullpen, there was so much happening on Friday that I did not bring this up, but this stood out to me watching that game on Friday night. A 10-inning Nats game, a super close game in which Kyle Finnegan did not pitch. Was there a reason for that, or did Davey Martinez just choose not to use Kyle Finnegan in that game?
I think the thought process was on the road, you're holding him back in case there's a save situation. Now, you can agree with that or not, but what you had was Eduardo Salazar going multiple innings in big spots and coming through very well for them. And then ultimately Jose Ferrer on the mound when the game on the line in the 10th because of a lefty matchup. Now, had it gone another inning, my guess is that Finnegan would have pitched regardless, because at some point you have to say we have to use our closer, whether there's a save opportunity later on or not. But yeah, my takeaway from that was that he was just saving him for a save opportunity that never came. But now you're talking about back-to-back close, tight losses to the Braves in which your closer, your best reliever in theory, did not appear either time. You don't love that, but again, I understand the logic. He's not the only manager who would treat it that way. And at least on Friday night, it worked, the guys that he used. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened, though, if it got to a point they said, I'm going to use Finnegan regardless.
Kyle Finnegan has not been great lately, but Kyle Finnegan is, at least in theory, the Nats' number 1 reliever, a guy who the Nats decided not to trade regarding that July 30th MLB trade deadline. We now are 24 days into August. Kyle Finnegan has pitched in 6 games this month. That's it. This guy's your number 1 reliever. We have a manager in Davey Martinez who loves to use his bullpen, like we have seen that. And your supposed ace reliever has made 6 appearances in this month of August. That stands out. And again, Finnegan hasn't been great lately. I don't know if that is entering into Davey's mind, but like when you look at this from 30,000 feet, if a guy is your best reliever, you play all of these close games, you decided not to trade this guy when arguably you should have. I mean, I made it clear I thought that they should have. And you've used him 6 times, and we are deep into the month of August. I find that very interesting, very curious. Perhaps Davey has his reasons, but I bet that surprises people that Finnegan has made just 6 appearances this month.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize it was that low. I knew it hadn't been a lot, but you've had a team that has lost some games. You've also had a team that the games they've won have been a little more lopsided, and so you've had like non-save situations where other guys have closed it out. I think it's always a tricky and fascinating question with closers. Holding on to them because you want to use them in the really tight games that you're ahead by 1 or 2 runs versus using him in just close games. Maybe you're down a run or tied on the road because, as you said, in theory, they are your best reliever and they should give you the best option of putting a 0 up and making it to the next inning. And again, I don't think Davey's alone in this regard. I think most managers still act this way, but sometimes you're holding off and saving a guy for a spot that never ends up coming up. And that's how you end up with only 6 appearances in 24 days.
Yeah, to me, you use your weapons. Now, when you're rebuilding, it's different than when you're contending. But like that's a big thing about managing in October. And by the way, Davey has shown he can be masterful in October. But like when you have an ace reliever, you deploy that guy. Like you don't wait for a circumstance, like you said, that may never arise. So just interesting to see that with Finnegan. So with Jake Irvin, you talk some about his performance in this game. He was solid, if not good. I mean, he certainly didn't like overwhelm you with what he did. But I mean, considering the opposition, 2 runs in 5 1/3 innings, gave up 5 hits, a home run, and 4 singles. Did issue 3 walks, only had 3 strikeouts, but 83 pitches, 54 strikes, 29 balls. I feel like with Irvin, he's holding on tight. And for a while, it looked like the season was starting to go downhill, but he has staved that off. He hasn't been at his best for a while now, but he hasn't necessarily been like really bad either. He just hasn't been at that level that he was at. But I do give him credit. He has not allowed this thing to unravel. And just when you think that might happen, he'll give you a good outing or a decent outing to where, okay, like he's still staying on course. Not as much as you want, but he's not coming apart the way that other pitchers do.
He's still having, I think, unquestionably a good season. It was shaping up to maybe be a great season for him, and I suppose there's still time for him to do that. But he has not fallen off the way that Mackenzie Gore fell off for, almost 2 months there until the start the other night. So I think that's been good. As I said, really good against the Braves. He came into this one with 12 scoreless innings in 2 starts against them and then puts up 4 more zeros. So that's 16 scoreless innings against the Braves until he finally gave up the home run in the bottom of the 5th. He did have runners on base in this one, but he made some big pitches, got Marcelo Ozuna, probably their best hitter, to ground into 2 double plays. He had a big strikeout of d'Arnaud in the first to get out of that inning unscathed. And what happened, and it applied to the relievers later on too, the home run, he had 2 strikes on him, 3-2 pitch. He throws a curveball, it's up in the zone. It gets whacked. And then in the 6th, pitches up a little bit in the zone. But I really would have liked to see him try to get through that. I don't think you treat him the way you have some of the younger pitchers. Parker and Hurts are in their first big league seasons. Irvin's in his 2nd. He was a college guy. I think he's 27 years old. I feel like you can push him a little bit more. And I think you need to find out some things. Can he hold up over the whole season? Can he get himself out of a jam later in a game? Eventually, if he's going to be the pitcher that you want him to be, he's going to find himself in this kind of spot in a game of a lot more significance than this one. And you got to know, can he do it? Has he ever done it before? And so I was disappointed in that. I understand the reasons, but I was disappointed. I really would have liked to see him get a chance to go further and try to get himself out of that inning.
Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Uber Direct helps you give your customers what they want when they want it. Offer them delivery options in under 2 hours, on the same day, or scheduled up to 30 days in advance. Plus, share real-time tracking and ETAs by text. You can keep growing your business at a price that works for you. Never pay commission or hidden charges. Just pay a fixed fee per delivery. delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Out of the stretch, he delivers. First pitch hit in the air to left field. Duvall going back, has the play, squares up on it there, and makes the catch in deep left field. And the ball game is over. A very quick 4-pitch ninth inning for Pierce Johnson to record the save, his second of the year.
Mentioned that the Nats had another base running blunder in this game. Jacob Young, who made 2 outs on the base pass on Friday night, he actually ended up making another one in this game on Saturday night. Young is the Nats starting center fielder and number 9 batter, 1 for 4 with a single, but he then got picked off. Top of the second, a 2-out first pitch, opposite field single to right field on a ball that actually was nearly caught by Braves right fielder Ramon Laureano, but Young then got picked off at first base for the 3rd out of the inning. This is not the Jacob Young we know, making these outs on the base pass. Of course, these are the Nats who we have come to know, which is making a bunch of outs on the base pass. I don't know what is left for us to say about this. It's maddening. The Nats cannot get control of this. I think it's the number one criticism I know that I have of Davey Martinez, that this is happening under his watch and has happened now over multiple seasons. But here you have now Jacob Young doing this. I hope that Dylan Cruz does not get infected with the Nats' bad base running itis, because, we've seen it happen with James Wood, and I don't want to see it happen with Dylan Cruz. So somehow, I don't know if we can immunize Cruz to this or what, but please, let's not have him become someone who starts displaying symptoms of the bad base running itis.
And he's been a good base runner in the minors. He steals bases. He's not a huge burner like Wood, but he can run, and he will run. And I'm sure they're going to encourage him to run when he gets here on Monday. This has got to get better. I don't know how many other ways we can say it. And in Young's case, it was back-to-back pickoff attempts. He just made it back on the first one. They called him out on the second one. They challenged it. It was close, admittedly, but I think it was the right call. He was out. You can't keep doing this to yourself. And again, this happens with 2 outs and runners on the corners and C.J. Abrams at the plate. You took the bat out of his hands. Don't know if he would have come through or not for you, but give him a chance to drive in the run. It just feels like they are trying to force the issue there. And I don't know if this is specifically they're calling for these from the dugout in certain spots, or the players are feeling like, hey, boy, our only chance to score runs is to be aggressive on the bases and make it happen that way. At some point, let the guys hit. Give them a chance to score runs in the conventional manner. And that, I think, has become pretty maddening here over the course of the summer.
It, to me, is like an NFL team that commits a ton of penalties. You can say, well, the players need to be better. The players need to be more disciplined. But at some point, it becomes a really poor reflection on the head coach of what kind of a program are you running to where these guys keep doing this and the habits don't change. And I feel that way about the Nats outs on the base pass under Davey Martinez. Like, this is happening under your watch. It doesn't matter the specifics of each one and what happened and what went wrong, and maybe it wasn't the manager's fault, whatever. Like, this is happening under your watch. It's been going on for too long, and I don't know why it happens. I don't know anyone. I haven't heard like a good theory for why this keeps happening, but it does keep happening. And, as we have said, if the Nats were a good team, if they were a contending team, this could be costing them down the stretch of a season. I mentioned this being game number 1,000 for Davey Martinez in terms of regular season games as Nats manager. The record now 450 and 550. Obviously, there's context there because the team won a World Series in his second season and then nosedove right into a rebuild. But that is quite the milestone to reach, given, as you know all too well, the managerial turnover that this franchise had for years until Davey got hired.
Well, I mean, here's all you need to know is that next on the list in games managed for the Washington Nationals is Manny Acta at, I think it's 410 for them. So Davey's managed more than twice as many games as anybody else. And we're talking it's 7 seasons now he's here, and he's already signed for another one for season 8. So it's been great on the one hand to have the stability that they have never had around here. But you would think that a guy managing as long as that would have a little better record. And again, extenuating circumstances. And I don't think you're blaming him for the fact that the organization decided to tear down a championship roster and start over again. But I'm looking at, managers all time who are in that range, in the 450 winning percentage range. And it's guys like Bob Boone, who worked for the Nationals for a while, Lloyd McClendon, Jim Riggleman, 445. So we're not talking about big name Hall of Fame type managers here. Now, again, that ring that he won goes a long way and kind of allows you to gloss over the other losses. But as we've discussed, I think next year is a critical year for everybody in the organization. It is time to see real progress, and progress not just in terms of individuals doing better or putting a young team out there that looks promising, but actual wins and losses. I think there's going to be pressure on Davey. I think there's going to be pressure on Mike Rizzo. I think there's going to be pressure on the coaching staff, on the organization, everybody to have a better record next year. There's still games we played this year. We'll see how it turns out. But at this stage of the rebuild, I think wins and losses are starting to matter more. And at some point, you've been given the opportunity to see this thing through again. Let's start seeing the results.
And I think the fan base has reached its maximum point in terms of being able to stomach the rebuild. I think this year was it. I could tell at the trade deadline, people are kind of over every trade deadline now, the Nats being aggressive sellers. And I think if you are an intelligent baseball fan, as most people listening to this podcast are, you understand what the Nats have been doing. You get what the Nats have been doing, but it's not this infinite process. Like at some point, it does need to yield results, and I think if it doesn't next season, people are going to be really upset about it. And I'm with you. I think Davey Martinez's job is on the line next season. I think Mike Rizzo's job is on the line next season. It's a funny deal though with Davey because, as we have discussed, this is such an odd rebuild in that the head of baseball ops and the manager who took you into the rebuild, in theory, are taking you out of the rebuild. If the Nats do well next season, you're talking about Davey Martinez likely being the manager here for a decade, if not more, right? Because he'll be the manager for next season and then beyond that. If the Nats don't do well next season, then he's out, and he'll be out with this record that is really underwhelming. And with really only having had what you would call one successful season. 2018 was a winning season, but nobody felt like that was a successful season. 19 was glorious, and then ever since then, it's been one losing season after another. So it is this really odd bio that if you weren't around for his tenure, you have a hard time explaining to someone, how did this guy last for this long with this bad of a record and only one truly successful season? So it's strange. And like I said, if it does go well next year, then this guy's going to be the manager here for years to come. Like, he's not going anywhere. And you're talking about probably a decade even more maybe with Davey Martinez as the Nats manager.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he'll be, there's an option for 2026, I believe. So they don't necessarily have to extend him next year, but I'm sure there will be discussions about that if they do well, because he'll want some security and they'll probably want to try to, at least discuss the possibility of it. And, you mentioned the success in 19. Obviously, you can't be any more successful than he was. But let's remember, on May 24th, they were a disaster. And we were talking, is there a chance he wouldn't even survive to have the opportunity to come back from a 19-31 start? So it's really like 4 regular season months plus one glorious October is what you point to as far as Davey Martinez's success as a manager. 18 was a huge disappointment. That was a team that was supposed to win and did not. And even, 2020, you're throwing out the window, COVID, everything else. 21, it was still a team that was expected to win. They got off to another bad start. They got red hot in June. You thought, okay, here they go. And then everything fell apart in July. And for all these years, there's been a valid argument to say it's not the manager's fault. That's not the reason that they've been in this predicament. But if ownership does what a lot of people want to see them do this winter, if the GM does what a lot of people want to see him do this winter, then I think it is fair in 2025 to say that the team's success is a reflection in some way of the manager. And it will be fascinating. We're looking way ahead of ourselves here. But if they go into next year with expectations and they get off to a slow start, which we know this team generally does, you're going to start hearing the calls for it, and I think it will be appropriate to at least wonder if they would have to consider doing something in season. Getting way ahead of ourselves here, but it is something to think about in terms of how the mindset could and should be different in 2025 than it's been for the last several years.
Well, perhaps John McLaren is still around and he could serve as interim skipper for the Nats next season. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio, 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Drinking and driving is a decision that could change your whole world. Things will never be the same if you ever get a DUI. Because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way that your world can be turned upside down. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You can face a life-altering injury or even death. But you're not the only one that can face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive can permanently impact not just your world, but someone else's world as well. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.